Yay, we're live. Hello. Hello, everyone. Let me just check some settings really fast. Just like to triple check and make sure we're good. Hi, you guys. Hello. Happy Sunday, or maybe Monday, depending on where in the world you are. We're looking good. If there is any buffering or anything appearing, let me know, but everything's checking out on my end. So welcome. Welcome, you guys. Happy Sunday again. My favorite day of the week. Um, and I love seeing a lot of the familiar faces. Hello, Chi-chan. Hello, Lissy. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening. Hello, Parody JT. Hello. Hello, Deja. Hello, Vivian. David. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining. Lucy, hi. Girl, I was thinking about you the other day. Imagining you were well. I hope you are well. Welcome, you guys. We'll go ahead and jump in here in just a moment. I always like to give it a second to let people get the notification, come on in, get settled, and then we will jump in and get started for another round of Q&As. Martha, my dear, hi. Rose from Montana, hello. Happy to see you live. Happy for you to be here. Thank you for joining me, Krishna. Captivating Krishna. I love your name, by the way. Hello, John. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining. Hello, smart people. Ian Z, hello. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be so good. I am excited. I hope you all are having a fantastic weekend so far. It is nice and rainy out here, which is actually much needed. It's so sometimes you got to love those cold days sometimes. Not often, but after you've had weeks of sunshine and hot weather, it's a perfect cool day, curling up on the couch with some soup and some cider kind of day. It's going to be good. Hello, Allie. Hi. Hello. Oh, let me just make sure the chat's not doing anything funky. Okay. All right, just checking a couple other things really quick. I think we are good on that end. So many of my favorites and familiar faces. Yay. So appreciate you guys being here. Being kind to myself. Hello, I love your name. That is such a strong and powerful message that we all need to remember. We must be kind to ourselves. Northwest Wind. Yay. Oh my God, Kim. Excuse me, Kim. Hi, it has been a while. Good to see you again. Thank you for being here. All right. So we've already got a number of questions trickling in. We've already got, oh, wow, the number keeps jumping. We already got, wow, over 60 people here so far, and we're barely 5 minutes into this. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Again, thank you all so much for being here, and welcome. I am so excited to dive into another Sunday of Q&As where we sit back, we hang out, and we talk all things manifestation, the law of assumption, and just help get clearer and have a deeper understanding of what this is, what all of this means, because naturally it is such a simple concept, but there's so much complexity and nuance, and that's just the beautiful paradox that is manifestation. So thank you all for being here. Happy to see you all, both old faces and new faces alike. Before we get started, I know we've got a lot of questions trickling in already, but a couple of quick announcements, as I always like to do. So, my self concept masterclass, which I have been working on for some time now, that will be released tomorrow, Monday, September 4th at 12 p.m. And as I usually do with my launches, I will have a 30% discount offered for the first week. So, definitely jump on that. Make sure to take advantage of that. Um, 4-week course. uh, Thorough to dive into how to go ahead and change this concept of self that we hear so much about in this community. So I'll have more information about that. Keep check on the community tabs. I will be making more announcements that that comes out. Also, my coaching program, the Mindset Mastery class, is coming up on the 25th. We will be jumping in again. So if you are not registered and would like to do so, make sure you do so. We've already started to reach out to some people. If you have not heard back, don't worry. We will get to you. But anyways, all of my resources, all of my programs are down there in the description box below. So anything that you are interested in, if you are interested in working together, you know where to check it out. So with all that said, and without further ado, Chi-Chan has a really good question about the I am meditation. I was doing the I am meditation and suddenly I felt a strong cold in the belly area as if I were falling. Is this normal? Yeah, that's normal. That's normal. You may notice a falling sensation followed by an expansion sensation. It's very normal to notice a lot of different, yeah, different kinds of feelings like that can and typically do happen. Yeah, the strong sensations in the belly area, all of that is fairly normal. I've certainly experienced that. People that I've talked to have experienced similar things. Yeah, yeah, rest assured, all of that is quite normal, and in fact, indication that you are going deep enough, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm using the right words for that, but yeah, it's easy to get startled at first. It's easy to kind of snap ourselves out of that expansion or that feeling because we're not used to it. As you become more familiar with the meditation, you will you won't be alarmed or you won't be you're least likely to snap out of it or pull yourself out or anything like that. Keep going. Definitely keep going. Oh wait, I need caffeine. I need caffeine really quick. When was I? Oh, yes. One-on-one coaching. If you have reached out with inquiries about one-on-one coaching, you will get a response. Bear with me. My assistant is out on maternity leave, so I have been mangling the ropes for the last 4 weeks or so. She will be back next week, but I'm getting through everything as quickly as I can. So if you have questions about one-on-one coaching that you've reached out about, rest assured you will you will hear back. I don't mind the early hours when it's time to follow the Q&A. Oh, Chi-chan, you are lovely. How can we tell the difference between our thoughts or picking up on another person's thoughts? For example, he hates me. Is that my assumption or is he thinking that first? Good question. It's always that's your assumption. That would be an assumption that we have. Um, Picking up on others' thoughts isn't that's not really a thing. That's not really a thing. In your reality, through your eyes and your experience, it's all your perception. It's your assumptions, always. Other people don't have the ability to, uh, you know, hold any kind of power over us or transplant thoughts into us. Nothing like that. So if we're noticing these kinds of intrusive thoughts, he hates me, he doesn't like me, he's this, that's our assumption. Um, First, foremost, and always. So it's feedback, really. We want to look at these thoughts, these reactions as feedback, telling us what beliefs and assumptions we're still holding on to, or what state we've been occupying. So yeah, that's how we can use these intrusive thoughts to our advantage to let us know if we are in fact living in the end, or perhaps not. So we can redirect if needed. Y'all are so sweet. Damn it, you're so sweet. Hi, everybody from Italy. I just discovered this channel and it's so good. Thank you. Thank you, Alessandro. Good to have you here. I'm glad you enjoy. Hi, Missy. A question. What do you do when you are angry with SP and feel, why should one even bother about that? Oh, I'm not, I'm laughing because I've very much been in that myself. I've certainly had those feelings before myself. And I think that's something that naturally a lot of people go through on this journey. It can certainly feel like a roller coaster when we're angry with our SP, which of course comes up for us. I I mean, if you need to be angry, if you need to have a moment to do so, I'm always the biggest opponent of let yourself have a moment if you need to have a moment. Let yourself be mad if you need to be mad, because the alternative is to just shove our emotions down, shove everything down, suppress it, and that is going to cause more harm than good. Period. It's never gonna be a better idea to just try to shove it down, suppress it, or lie to ourselves and pretend like we're okay if we're not okay. Um, so if you need to have a moment, have a moment. If you need to be angry. Because what you can always do is once that's been processed, once you've let yourself kind of go through the notions, process those feelings, and you when you come out the other side of it feeling a bit better, feeling a bit lighter, or more neutral at the very least, from there, it's gonna be much easier to revise it, right? We can always go back and revise, we can always go back and change it. Ultimately, we don't need to fear being angry or being in a mood. That we don't ever need to do that. Um, yeah, let yourself if it feels like you need to get it out, come back and revise it later. Once you have kind of once that feeling of anger have subsided and you're feeling better, come back and revise later. But yeah, don't ever suppress what you're feeling. Don't try to lie to yourself. We can't lie to ourselves, so it's yeah, it's kind of moot to do so. Happy Sunday on a Sunday afternoon. I hope you are doing well. Thank you, Mohammed. I hope you are well. I hope you're well. I can't talk today. I hope you're doing good as well. And thank you for being here. Catching you before I run to work, classes in session. Thank you, Alexandria. Good to have you guys. Where am I? Hi, Missy. I'm in a similar boat as you were way back when. SP cares deeply but is unable to be romantic. I unconditionally support SP always, and I'm actually super calm. How do I ride this wave? Good question. And first and foremost, it's good to hear that you're feeling calm about it. It doesn't feel like you're anxious about it, which is, I mean, ideal, right? Uh, a lot of the times we may notice anxiety, so the fact that you're feeling calm is good. But the first thing that we want to remember, or I guess catch ourselves, is what are we assuming, right? If we're looking at the circumstance, what is our assumption? Just through pure observation, just objective observation, is that SP cares about me. They love me, but they don't want to get any more into the romance, or they're not interested in being romantic, not interested in a partnership. That's all purely assumption, right? So I mean, we can see the 3D is the way that it is. That's fine, whatever. We're not trying to meddle with all of that. But it's a moment to turn within and give ourselves the experience of that loving and committed relationship, that romantic partnership. And just continue to bask in it. Just let yourself go there. And especially if you're feeling calm, if you're not feeling anxious, that is really perfect opportunities to just let yourself go there, right? Because without that anxiety, you should be noticing much less resistance or trepidation to experiencing that feeling of the wish fulfilled. So yeah, that's really the long and short. But don't ever accept an assumption that is not ideal. Do 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 do. Where was I? Sorry guys. Hi Missy, I'm so appreciative for you. Oh, thank you, Ashley. Can I ask on ways to help with getting into the state when typical methods aren't helping? I'm manifesting an ex, but can't seem to grasp how it felt with him. Good question. So, ways to get into a state when techniques aren't working. I take it. Um, and that's no, that's a really good question because I know it can seem like typical methods. Uh, if we're putting willpower and force behind the techniques, it's probably going to feel challenging. And that's usually where that stems from. Like we're trying to affirm our faces off, and it starts to feel like a lot of work. It starts to feel like a lot of like we're doing a chore, and yeah, it's just not ideal. So what we want to remember about techniques is it's not even the technique itself that's important. It's how we allow ourselves to feel. So, what are some things that you naturally enjoy? Right? Do you like going for walks? Do you like taking bubble baths? Do you like going for long drives? Do you like, um, you know, kicking back and watching something relaxing and just kind of zoning out? Anything that naturally feels good to do and that can get yourself as relaxed as possible first is going to be just as effective as any manifestation technique that you see out there. Um, because we want to first get relaxed. We want to ideally not be in a very anxious or wound up state. It's going to feel challenging to feel something lovely when we're feeling anxious. So anything that you enjoy doing, like listening to your favorite music, just blasting it through your house and anything that feels good to do and that will allow you to just first get into that relaxed, feel good state. And then from there, you can begin to just go wild in imagination and just whatever you desire to experience, whatever you enjoy in doing with SP, whatever you see yourself doing, from there, it's going to feel much more natural to do. So, yeah, don't feel like you have to stick with the traditional techniques of affirmations or sats or anything like that. They're all trying to do the same thing, and that's help us capture the feeling of the wish fulfilled. So yeah, I hope that helps. Excuse me. Missy, what happens to pets after their death? If it's the same as us, I can manifest them in my life again, right? That's a good question, Vivian. Yeah, well, I mean, first off, the concept of death as we know it isn't real. We don't just cease to exist. That's not a thing, and that even goes against the laws of physics if we want to get all scientific about it. But there's no such thing as death. So, and just like with us humans, our pets, our fur family, absolutely don't just cease to exist. Um, no, there's states of consciousness where they are still very much alive. They are still very much alive. Let's just put it that way. So, if you're like, is it possible to manifest them? I mean, if we're talking anything is theoretically possible. Let me put it that way. Anything is technically possible. I will never say that you can't do this or this is not possible because if you can imagine it, you can experience it. Full stop. But what where we struggle with that, excuse me, damn it. Where we struggle with that is our convictions and our conditioning, right? We are very conditioned to accept and believe that once somebody has passed, whether that be a pet or human, once they've passed, they're gone. Um, and we manifest what we feel to naturally be true. So where a lot of people struggle with the big things that sound impossible is just that it sounds impossible. Is it impossible? No, absolutely not. But it's sort of we need to suspend the disbelief, the very strong disbelief that this is a thing that we can experience. But if that is what you desire and you desire to move into a state where your little fur baby is still there, of course you can. Of course you can. But I would practice first getting very, very like strengthening your conviction in the law first and foremost, because if there's doubts and hesitations, that's what makes it challenging to do so. What if SP told me at the beginning of our relationship that the reason his marriage dissolved is due to him cheating? I feel like you would advise me to revise. If so, how would you revise this? You know me well, Lucy. You know me well. Because yeah, I would revise. I'd strongly recommend revising. Anytime we hear something that's not ideal, experience something that's not ideal, we want to revise it, like full stop. So, how you would go about doing this? Um, a couple different ways that you can do it. You could imagine that there was another reason that there was that he divorced. If you're talking about this instance specifically, you could imagine that the dissolve was, mutual and respectable. You can imagine that the conversation went any other way, right? Imagine him telling you another reason, perhaps something more ideal, I guess. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that I'd recommend, but I do recommend revising it and instead imagining now that conversation just went differently in a way that would have been uh, more desirable to hear. Hi, Missy. How do you think about ask formations? Thank you. Good question. So, ask formations for those who might not know is affirmations, but in the form of a question. So instead of saying like "I am loved," "I am chosen," it would be, "Why am I always chosen? Why am I always, showered with affection by everybody?" And I mean, just like any technique, it's what resonates with you. If that is what helps to capture that feeling, if that's what helps you to really get into that feeling of the wish fulfilled, if it gets you, excited or if it gets you feeling good, then absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Really, it's do they help you? Are they helpful for you? And if so, I would keep using them. How do you know if you truly want SP or someone new? I still have a great end scene of a general wish fulfilled of being in a relationship, though. Is that okay? I mean, yeah, yeah. Um, if it's a wish fulfilled, if it's a desirable experience that you're imagining, that's always okay. But how do you know if you truly want an SP or somebody new? I mean, I would meditate on that. I would get clear on that. How would it feel if SP showed up at the door right now versus somebody completely new or somebody completely different? Um, w- is there any sort of preference one way or another? Is the reason that you're looking for somebody new, is it because you don't think you can get your SP back? And it feels like, playing it safe would be to find somebody new? Like, things like that, I would just kind of reflect on those questions, meditate on those questions, and see what comes up for you. Because we don't want to, imagine something because we think we can't get what we ultimately desire. We don't wanna settle, basically. Don't ever settle. You're too good for that. Don't ever do that. Um, but yeah, just, give yourself a moment to see if there really is truly a preference, or if you would genuinely be happy with somebody else. It's gonna be different for everybody. But yeah, if you have a general wish fulfilled scene, I think that's perfectly okay. In fact, if we go more general and there's less resistance to the idea and we're better able to live in the end, that's always the preferred method to go, right? Yay. Alright, let me go back. Where's my spot? I think I missed somebody back here. Hang on. Is there a difference between manifesting an object or a trip versus occupying a state that is part of your identity? Interesting question. So, is there a difference between manifesting an object versus occupying a state that is part of your identity? If I'm understanding correctly, you mean is there a difference between manifesting some material object versus manifesting a change in your identity? I mean, the law works the same for everything, right? But it may feel, depending on what the beliefs and assumptions you hold, depending on what you perceive as true and not true, uh, moving into a state where you have this trip, or you're going on this trip, it can certainly feel just as natural. I might be misunderstanding your question a little bit. It's a fascinating one, but I want to make sure that I understand correctly. Because if you're talking about, is there a difference in how we manifest depending on what it is? Like, if I want a trip to Tahiti versus I want to change part of myself, is there a difference in how we approach that? The answer is no. Uh, not really. If I wanna take a trip somewhere, or I want to get a new car, I imagine myself doing that, or owning that. If I desire to see a change within myself, if I'm trying to change an aspect of myself, my identity, I would imagine myself as the person that is already like this, right? Because that ideal version of you already exists. So, but in both cases, it's going there in your mind. It's giving yourself the experience in your mind. So if that's what you meant, I hope. But if I'm misunderstanding the question, let me know. Been quiet for a few months. SP posted a few pics with SP, but with third party, but I'm not phased. This week, out of the blue, he DM'd, said he was thinking of coming over. While coming over is a transatlantic flight as I'm in Spain. Wow. And he'd asked if I'd be his tour guide. He's aiming for October. Don't want to get ahead of myself, slash, nothing set yet. I want to keep this going on the right path and not sabotage my progress. Any suggestions? Wow. Kim, that's first and foremost, I'm really happy to see that despite the photos of SP and third party, you weren't phased. That speaks volumes. That says a lot about the state that you have been occupying, the state that you've been dwelling in, right? So I have to say right off the bat, that is a fantastic indication. And as far as how to keep going on the right path, continue to do what you've been doing because clearly, just based off your reactions alone, there is definitely been a change taking place within you. Um, so yeah, I would just continue to continue to go to the place where you and SP are already together. It's already done. This is just the bridge unfolding. Everything's unfolding perfectly. You've got this. You've got this. How can you access the feeling of being loved and chosen by SP when you grow up with emotional neglect? Sometimes I find it hard to know how it feels to feel loved and chosen. Any tips? That's a really good question, Lavi, because I experienced something similar, unfortunately. The idea of being chosen, being prioritized, was so alien for me. So I completely understand that. One thing that I did that, and this may sound kind of bizarre, but because it was such an alien feeling, I genuinely had not experienced that. I thought about like at the time I had a little beagle puppy. Well, she wasn't a puppy, but she was my baby. I absolutely loved this dog, and this dog loved me. She adored me, and that I used that to kind of like get familiar with that feeling, just to get started, just to kind of wander into what that would be like. I tried to recall any times where there where somebody had told me like, "Missy, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for coming through in clutch," because that did happen a couple times with my old line of work. I certainly helped put out some fires, and I had people really express their appreciation for me. So I would use that, and I would just like anything that I could to get the idea of it in my mind, just get behind the idea of it, even if it was something seemingly small and insignificant, didn't matter. The aim was to just really begin to build up this conception, right? This idea of being loved and chosen. If we can't, if it feels very difficult to imagine it from SP, if there were any other times in your life from anyone, if you have siblings, if you have, best friends or anything like that that you can use to siphon that feeling and really get, as clear of a picture as you can, I would do that first and foremost. Hello. Hello, hello. Where was I? If I understand correctly, dreams are an opening into what has been impressed onto the subconscious. If I am manifesting moving to a new place and I dream about being in that place, should I take note? Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that that is fantastic indication because yeah, dreams are that's kind of the window that we get into the subconscious mind. It's feedback. So if you are dreaming that you've moved into this new place when that has been what you've been imagining, I would absolutely take that as good indication. 100%. One second. Oh, there we go. Missy, I'm manifesting my SP for about 3 months now. At first, when I started doing the techniques, there was some movement from my SP. She texted me and called me, but now I don't see any movement. What to do? Um, don't continue to look out to the 3D. I would strongly I know that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest challenge that we face is the 3D projection out there. But if we continue to observe and continue to bring into awareness, they're not reaching out to me, they're not doing anything. Why is it not working now? We're gonna just continue to spiral from that. So I would take take note. Just let yourself kind of pull back from the 3D. Whatever you need to do to just give yourself a moment to get centered, get grounded again, and remember that this is all imagination. This is all imagination. Continue to go within regardless. It truly does not matter what is happening or isn't happening in the 3D. Because we don't want to continue to feed these fears and continue to set into motion things that we don't want, right? Again, I know it can be challenging sometimes, but to the best of your ability, don't pay attention to the 3D. I do not advise. Thank you for the super chat, Kim. Thank you, thank you. Oh, David, you're so sweet. Thank you. I have a question this time, though. Have you studied the works of R.J. Spina at all? Just curious. Yeah, absolutely. He that was the one they had cured themselves from some kind of debilitation, right? They had some kind of I wanna say that they were paralyzed and they manifested being able to walk again, if I recall. If that's the same person I'm thinking of, then yes. Yeah. Incredible, incredible testimony, incredible, and powerful message. Yeah, if we're thinking of the same person, then absolutely. I am in contact with my SP again, and it's so far been good, but my friends are discouraging me, and I've been in a lack and negative mindset ever since. Oh, boo. Yeah, everyone is you pushed out. So if you have friends that are naysaying and talking crap, that's a reflection of our own fears and insecurities. That's a reflection of the things that we may be harboring subconsciously. So take the 3DS feedback, right? Um, I would obviously you don't need to fight with them. You don't need to battle it out with your friends or anything like that. Um, that's just feedback letting you know that there may still be that some of those insecurities or some of those fears and doubts, which is not at all uncommon. I think the vast majority of people on an SP journey go through those motions sometimes. Um, if you're able to, I mean, I would you could just be straight up and say like, I don't want to hear it. Like, I'd rather not talk about this. Let's move the topic to something else. Like, and if they're truly your friend, they should genuinely respect that, and respect your boundaries. But always remember at the end of the day, it's all just reflection. It's all feedback. And so perhaps that just means that you need to spend more time getting familiar with that new version of you, right? Embodying that new state. It may not be fully solidified just yet, and that's okay. We just want to continue to imagine from the place of already having the desire. And, revising through imagining your friends telling you congratulations, imagining your friends saying, you two are perfect together. I'm so happy to see you, so happy. Things like that, right? Like, don't ever accept the 3D if it's not what you want. Ever. And that goes for all of you. Is it possible to manifest instantly when you're angry/scared? Um, I mean, yeah, certainly. And anything is possible. And if you have if there's an intense reaction taking place, if you notice you are like intensely focused on something, certainly it can happen. I mean, it also depends on what exactly it is, right? Um, but if you're talking like in general, is it possible to manifest when angry or scared? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Hi, Missy. Question about revision. If circumstances arise on a daily basis that are unwanted but are not really anything to do with my main desire, do I revise them or is that reacting to the 3D? Good question. I would absolutely revise anything in the day that was not wanted, whether or not it's related to your, your desired outcome, like whether or not it's in relation to like a specific person or whatever. I still would. I still would. I'm not a big fan of taking any parts of the day that were not ideal with me into sleep. Is that window before sleep is a very powerful one. So if we're in a mood, if we're ruminating on something unpleasant, it's just never gonna be helpful. It's never gonna be helpful. So yeah, I would recommend. Would recommend. Funny, I keep thinking I need more caffeine. Yeah, cheers. Everyone as you pushed out. Congratulations to your assistant. Oh, yeah. I will tell her that you said congrats. She had a little baby boy. Hey, Missy, as you live by the law, what problems do you have now in your life? Doesn't it make life less exciting that everything is a reflection, that there is no one out there? Good questions. Yeah, a couple of questions. What problems do I have? I mean, as far as do I have any like big issues that I'm tackling? No, no. I mean, there's times where day-to-day stuff will come up, but just like I mean, this is still a human experience that we're having, so it's not like I don't ever have situations arise or things happened or, you know, get annoyed myself, like, of course I do, I'm human. But as far as, like, is there anything big or major that I need to change? Mm-mm, no. Doesn't it make life less exciting that everything is your reflection? Quite the contrary. I for me, it makes everything much more exciting, um, that there is no one out there. I like to see it that there's everything out there. Um, it's very easy to look at the approach of like, oh, it's just empty void. It's all us. There's nothing else out there. Consciousness is everything. It's everyone, and I don't see people as like objects. Like they're still very much that they're people, right? Um, they're all brothers and sisters to me. Like we are all one consciousness. Ultimately, that is awareness. That is God. And that is I am. We all say I am because I have this awareness as you have this awareness. So I don't personally see it like that. I can understand where that would come from, but for me, that the law has done nothing but absolutely enrich my life in the most incredible ways possible. Yeah. I visualized a situation I wanted and then naturally, not forcefully, started imagining activities SP and I would do. Is this being in the state and living from the end? Yes. Yes, that's it. Mhm. Yep. So, naturally, you'll start to notice, things coming up for you in imagination that would be stemming from that desired state. So, you're gonna start to notice thoughts coming up about things that you're gonna do together. Um, all that kind of thing indicates, yes, you are living in the end. You are thinking from the place of already being so or doing so or having that knowing that this is ultimately the outcome without trying to force it. That's what we wanna see, and that's why the more that we continue to imagine, guys, you're gonna start to notice things like that. You're naturally gonna have thoughts come up about that desire from that desire. That's what we want to see. Can you talk about your process of doing revision that takes a few seconds? Yeah, absolutely. So I assume you're talking about when I'm revising for the day, right? Like at the end of the day, revising anything that happened in the last 24 hours? Yeah. So the way that I revise is kind of in montage, right? It's kind of like I'm not literally playing out the day by day, every single moment. I just like if there's a conversation that was had that wasn't ideal, I'll imagine the conversation so- gone differently, right? So that's one or two sentences that imply that the conversation went different. So that's 1 second. If I had something happen, whatever, the car blew up outside or not blew up, broke down outside or just something ideal. I'd imagine, turning the ignition and the car started just fine. So, like, these things are quick successions and they all imply that it went the way I wanted it to go. So, I think where a lot of people struggle is that we think that this is like a ritual and that we need to, get ourselves relaxed and then go close our eyes and we got to do all these things and then we have to painstakingly imagine the whole day playing out. No. No, you don't got to do any of that, right? So yeah, like I do it in quick montage. So it literally takes all of like 10 seconds. 5 to 10 seconds depending on the day, if at all. I hope that makes a little bit sense. When will your one-on-one coaching be available? Just want to have since I would like to. Oh, thank you, Shelly. It's hard to gauge when the one-on-one coaching will be available again. But if you're not on the wait list, I would definitely make sure to do so. I have the link for it down in the description box, and you will be notified when that comes up, when that opens up, and be one of the first to know. Hi, Missy. I love your channel so much. Thank you, Kathy. I've noticed that I keep putting myself in a waiting mode. Do you have any advice for us to move into receiving now and not later? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And this is one of the areas that I know a lot of struggle happens. I certainly the state of waiting, being in waiting mode, I mean, in and of itself is implying that we're not in the state that we desire to be in, right? So it's really a practice of as you become aware in your day to day that you're not in a desirable state, you're not in an ideal state. Um, we move, right? We move by moving in imagination. So practice continuing to go within, practice continuing to get as familiar with you can as that with that desired state, whatever that looks like for you, and just really continue to go back there because the frequency of occupation is so important. It is so important. If we're spending like 5, 10, 20 minutes a day living in the ends, but the rest of the day we're thinking, from the state of lack, that's not going to be helpful for us. So it's it's a matter of like, catching yourself as soon as you become aware that you're waiting for something, that you're missing something or whatever it might be, give that to yourself first in imagination. Like give yourself the fulfillment in imagination first and foremost. I hope that makes sense. Oh my goodness, I think I missed a super chat. Ah! Oh no. Oh my gosh, Ian Z, I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for the super chat. SB and I dated only briefly. I feel time delay has been building up in me the last weeks. I get advice from people to write her. Is this messing with the middle? Um, yeah, stupid time. The perception of time is such an annoying one to deal with. Well, first and foremost, regardless of how long you dated, it ultimately does not matter. I know it might feels like it's something to take into consideration, but it is not. Um, because regardless, you can absolutely manifest that desired outcome. Um, Time delay is also not real. That is also a perception. That's not a real thing because time is not a real thing. We have this illusion of time. We have this perception of linear time, but we're living in moment to moment to moment and selecting states in moment to moment to moment. So if we are right now thinking about it's been X amount of time, we're continuing to live in the state of it's been more time, it's been more time, it's been more time, which is essentially the absence of what you want, right? It's certainly not the state that we want to dwell in. And that's the tricky thing about time is that if we are consistently and noticing ourselves anxious about time, we're just continuing to keep ourselves in a state because it's moment to moment. We're really want to practice being as present as possible because whether something happened 5 minutes ago, 5 months, 5 years ago does not matter. In this moment is all that matters. And the perception of time giving us more anxiety is only keeping us from truly enjoying the state of the wish fulfilled. I hope I'm making sense. Um, as far as reaching out to her and writing her, that it is entirely up to you. I will say if the urge to do so, if the urge to reach out is stemming from a place of fear or anxiousness, that if I don't reach out soon, if I don't see something happen soon, I'm going to lose them. If that's where it's coming from, I personally would not recommend responding in that way. Like, I wouldn't recommend acting on that, if that makes sense. Um, because if we, I mean, continue to occupy that idea, it's not going to get us what we want, basically. Um, yeah. And but to be clear, messing with the middle is conditioning our desire. And conditioning our desire just means that we put these conditions on what we're manifesting, right? So we tell ourselves these arbitrary things that make it seem like we can't have what we want. I can't manifest my SP because it's been, you know, 2 years and they've probably moved on already. I can't imagine being a millionaire because I don't even have $10 in my bank account right now. Those are all conditions that we're putting on the desired outcome instead of going to the end, instead of letting ourselves go to the end in imagination. So that's what that means, just to be clear. But as far as reaching out to somebody, writing somebody, be mindful of where that's stemming from, because if that urge to do so is coming from a place of fear and anxiousness, I personally don't recommend acting on that. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Lisa. How can we deal with abandonment issue in relationships? My anxiety has been manifesting so fast in all relationships with such strong intensity. Always been hot and cold for 10 years. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Oh, that sucks. And I certainly struggled with that myself. Abandonment was a big one for me. And how do we deal with that? I mean, the way that I approached it was what is the opposite of abandonment, right? Feeling chosen, feeling prioritized. Um, we're looking for the state that is polar to that naturally, right? So, what would be things that implied that you are chosen, that you are prioritized, that you always come first, that you are, worthy of keeping around forever? So, what are things that you can imagine that would imply? Because it's the implication that we're going for. When it comes to the imaginal act itself, we're just imagining things that imply what we desire, right? So that's what helps us to capture the feeling of it. So that could be, for example, um, people telling you how much they genuinely appreciate you and how much they prioritize you and they support you and they're always here for you. They're never going anywhere. You've always got somebody you can count on. These are things that we want to really begin to immerse ourselves with. Like, if we're talking from abandonment issues and dealing with that, I had to get really familiar with what the state of prioritized feels like. The state of safety, knowing that I'm these people are never going anywhere. These people that I love dearly, this, when it came to my SP, it I had to become deeply familiar with that state and continue to go there. Again, the frequency of occupation is also incredibly important. Let yourself get carried away, let yourself play in this, let yourself get saturated with the idea of what it's like knowing that you are always prioritized, that you are always number 1 in your world. So many things are blossoming and showing petals, if you will. I can't wait to update you. I'm waiting for full. Yay, Tracy. That is so lovely to hear. I love updates. Yes. And let me go back to my I don't even remember where my spot was. Damn it. One second, guys. How to overcome the fact and forget that my SP, my ex, gave attention to somebody else when I was around. How to persist in a self-concept of being chosen when directly saw the opposite. Good question. And I know that this is incredibly challenging. It can feel very challenging for us to do when we've had the opposite experience in the 3D. Because to us, the 3D feels so real. It feels so solid, factual. But it's not. But it's not. And it is an acclimation. It is getting familiar with a new way of thinking because all of this is a very new way of thinking. We're used to the idea that the 3D is reality, imagination is fake, it's just fiction, it's all of that. But it's that's absolutely not true. We actually have it completely backwards. Um, all that we're asked to do is let yourself when in imagination, let yourself construct this world, let yourself construct this space where you were the one chosen. Like, let let yourself do that because you don't need anyone's permission to do so. In your imagination, you construct anything and everything. So I would practice getting familiar with, yeah, just the construction and occupancy of those states. And I mean, creation's already finished, so we don't need to, like, actually make this thing happen or create it. Just allow yourself to get familiar with that state of being chosen in your imagination. What are some things that can continue to imply that? What are some scenarios that would help you to build your faith in that? What are the experiences that you can have in imagination that would only solidify that belief that you are in fact chosen? And then keep going back there. Yeah, Lisa, I just sorry, girl, I just answered your question. It, yeah, if you go back a little bit, I just answered your question. You are so welcome. Yep, I do vape. It tastes like delicious candy, that's why. You were so welcome. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to find where my spot was. I don't like to skip people if I can help it. I've befriended people who know my celebrity SP, and I'm meeting one of them later this month. Just wondering, how does thought transmission work if SP doesn't know me? Good question. So when it comes to thought transmission, mm, we're not like literally beaming thoughts into another person's brain. I think that there's a misconception there for some people that what's happening is what we're doing when we're imagining whatever it might be. If we're imagining this person showing up in this way, or we're moving into the state where that version of them is going to be apparent, right? It's going to determine what version of our SP shows up. So it's always us moving. It's never that we're doing anything to the out there to get it to change. It's always us moving states. We're moving through selecting new states of consciousness. So whether or not your SP knows you doesn't matter because again, whatever you are imagining, that's what you're selecting, right? Whatever you continue to imagine is what becomes selected and what becomes experience. I hope that makes sense. Just I'm going through a hard time. I recently got laid off from my job. Everything was going so smoothly with manifesting my desires along with SP. Does this have to do with the bridge of incidents? I mean, it absolutely could be. We don't know what the bridge looks like, typically until we're on the other side of the bridge. Uh, Usually the bridge will be apparent in hindsight, so hard to say about that. But I would continue to imagine. I wouldn't accept the outcome that I don't want. I don't ever recommend just allowing yourself to accept that, things didn't work out or that things are going badly. Whatever's reflecting in the 3D, it just is. It just is because it's all moldable. It's always changeable. We don't have to fixate on it. We don't need to figure out how to fix it. We can always go within and fix it, so to speak. Um, so I would, and I know it can be difficult, and I know especially when those big things happen that seemingly come out of nowhere. I know it could be challenging, but continue to imagine. Continue to go to the end. Don't let whatever's happening in the 3D, throw you off course or throw a wrench in things. Continue going to the end. Always. Always, always, always. Some people get discouraged by the pain in this world and horrible things like rape and trafficking. Yeah. Some feel that the law is too good to be true. What would you tell people with those thoughts? Good question. I was certainly one of those people that thought, there were things too good to be true. I think that that's an incredibly common belief. I think that that's a very common assumption that is most people form that assumption. That just is a thing. And I would say to them, I would say there's ways that we can prove the law to ourselves. The law is not lollipops and rainbows are your life all the time. It's no it the law is just simply whatever you assume, whatever you imagine is true will be your experience, right? Um, Nothing more, nothing less. So good or bad, right? But there's ways that we can prove that the law works. And I always encourage people to do so. Like, don't ever just take my word for this. Don't ever take anyone's word for this. Like, prove to yourself. Like, put it to the test for yourself. You know, eh, and whatever comes from that, so you can do whatever you want with that. But yes, there are horrible states of consciousness. There are terrible, awful states of consciousness that exist because everything exists. All of creation is finished. It's not only the good states exist and nothing else. Um, this is just helping us put the power back in our hands that we unconsciously and unknowingly gave away. We've been continuously giving our power to outside circumstances, um, and this is just allowing us to take that back now. But yeah, I would for people that say that this is too good to be true, test it. Don't take my word for it. Don't ever take my word for it. Prove it to yourself. All good, Lisa. No, you're good. Um, Revision and radical honesty. Lying. If I revise the situation and then I'm asked about it, do I answer from the new memory even though it's technically a lie? Good question. And that's a question that I get often is like, how do we deal with the 3D when it's opposite of what we've imagined or opposite of what we revised? And I'm never going to encourage people to lie, right? Be because we can't lie to ourselves. Um, if you are able to not have to discuss the old story, if you don't have to delve into the old story, I don't recommend doing so. But, if asked, you can respond honestly because there's what's happening in the 3D may be very different from what we are imagining and where we're dwelling internally. So even if something is terrible taking place out in the 3D or just happened, I don't have to ever accept that. I don't ever have to claim that as true and final. I know that my 3D can look a certain way and change. So even if it's polar opposite of what I'm imagining in this moment, it a lot of it comes down to faith that the law actually works, right? Um, because regardless of what happened, we know that if we revise it, we continue to revise it, leave that impression, it has to change, right? But I mean, if you can, I wouldn't speak on it. I wouldn't speak on that old story. I wouldn't bring it up. If directly asked and you have to respond, you can respond. Revise it again later if you have to. But yeah. What's the best way to contact you for one-on-one coaching? If you join my waiting list, I've got down below in the description box. You can sign up through there, and you will be first to notified once that waiting list opens again. I blocked SP from social media to avoid triggers. A huge step for me. Is this okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course that's okay. And I commend you for that. I know that that's huge. That's absolutely huge. Um, I had to do the same. I got to a point where, I had to something had to change within me. I was continuously letting myself get triggered by the 3D. It was certainly not helping me. So yeah, no, absolutely, that's okay. In fact, whatever you need to do to prevent being triggered over and over and over again is what I recommend. It's certainly not going to help you ultimately get what you want if you're continuously noting yourself falling back into that old state. So major props. I know that that's not easy. Um, but if you do the right thing for you, it's never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. How to sustain a new state? Good question. Um, Frequent occupation is the short answer. Because when it's a new state of consciousness, we're not going to likely, I want to say likely, um, dwell there for very long at first. When it's something brand new, we might visit a new state and then come right back. And that's typically what happens because we're creatures of habit. We have a dominant state that we've occupied and that we've been dwelling in for usually quite some time. So that's where we're going to continuously, at first, we're going to continuously be returning back to that state. So initially, if we're talking about a new state of consciousness, it's us having to go back there, frequent the occupation of that new state until it naturally becomes sustainable. And before you know it, you don't have to consciously redirect yourself. You're just going to you will just dwell there. I hope that makes sense. Thank you for the super chat. What is your recommendation for people that want to study Neville's material? What to study first and what is essential? Good question. Oh man. Um, I always recommend starting with the complete reader. The complete reader has all 10 of his books. And don't worry, they're short books. They're not massive reads, but that's always a good place to start. His books are a lot more straightforward. They're a lot more simple, easier to grasp than perhaps some of his lectures. But I would start there, and it's always hard for me to pick a favorite. Feeling is the secret, power of awareness, your faith is your fortune. Any one of those three, I would start with first and foremost. Uh, but yeah, absolutely get your hands on the complete reader. You can order it on Amazon. I think it's like 20 bucks. It's cheaper on Kindle, or I think you can even download it in PDF form on the interwebs. So, but yeah, start with the books, and those three are especially I would recommend. Yeah. Let me go back up. My SP goes to the same grocery store. Should I go to a different one so I don't mess with the middle until inspired action arises? Um, I wouldn't say that you have to literally go out of your way to avoid your SP. I mean, we don't I don't stalk them. I'm not saying, like we don't want to try to like manipulate or show up where they go at around the times that we know that they go to accidentally bump into them. But on the other hand, I wouldn't say that we need to like go out of our way to avoid them either. Just go about your day. If you need to go to the store, let yourself go to the store. If it's something that if the idea of going to that store and running into SP makes you feel anxious, in that case, yeah, yeah, 'cause, certainly we don't wanna let ourselves feel anxious, but, yeah, yeah, like, bumping into them randomly out in the 3D world is not messing with the middle. That's not what that means. Hello, IK. How to avoid just manifesting signs. I don't feel like I'm asking for birds before land or signs that things are working, but that's all I feel I'm getting. Good question. And this is I made a video for this reason because if we start to fixate on away from the sun, continue to fixate solely on the end it looks like for you. Because again, if we're constantly like giving credence to signs and confirming signs and getting excited for signs and signs, that's we're going to continue to manifest just that. Um, so I would not give any more power to those signs. What do we do when we're consciously trying to manifest something and the 3D shows up as the opposite? Yeah. Um, anytime anytime we notice the 3D showing up as opposite of what we've intended, um, well, that's feedback for us. We can always use the 3D as feedback, and we should be using the 3D as feedback always. Because what that's indicating is that there's still that belief or assumption, and that's what naturally showed up, right? Like if you've been trying to manifest something, but the opposite's showing up, well, that's your cue. That's your indication that there's still perhaps a belief or assumption that I'm holding on to that is opposite of what I desire, right? Because that's what manifests the beliefs and assumptions. Um, so I just take note, use it as feedback, and perhaps that can help to guide you into what perhaps to imagine, or if there's things that you need to approach differently, if perhaps you've been trying too hard with techniques. I know that that's a thing that commonly happens. Unfortunately, we try to you know go hard with the techniques and try and try and try, and then the opposite shows up because this is not a trying effort. This manifestation is a very natural process. So take it as feedback. Okay, if this thing is showing up, if I'm reacting to this thing showing up, then clearly there's a belief or there's an assumption alive within me that I'm still resonating with. So I want to uncondition that, right? I want to begin to imagine instead that this opposite thing over here. I don't have specific details from you, but yeah, use it as feedback always. I have recently come across someone on a dating site whose name is the same as my SP and also looks pretty similar to SP. Does that mean anything? Whatever meaning you give to it. As far as signs go, yeah. Does it mean that it's going to lead to something? No, signs follow. Signs always follow. They don't precede. We're not gonna get, like, clues that this is gonna lead to that this is gonna lead to that. Remember, we're going moment to moment to moment, right? So if we come across somebody with the same name and same looks, it means that we probably have that impression that's playing out, right? Um, so yeah, but, it means that that's what you've imagined. I hope that makes sense. Check out the video that I made talking more about signs. It's 1 or 2 videos back. Hopefully, that will make a little bit more sense. Missy, I've had a couple of dreams about my SP and I, and both times we weren't together and just friends. Is this my subconscious telling me it's not yet impressed and only thinks we're just friends? Well, note your reaction. Um, what is your reaction to that dream? Like, do you resonate with it? Does that feel true? Does it feel like you are just friends or that they're only gonna see you as friends? B because that's what I mean by feedback. Um, it really is just helping you get maybe a deeper look at something that's going on subconsciously. Um, but regardless, ultimately doesn't matter because because that's just saying, "Okay, perhaps I'm still resonating more with the idea of just being friends. So let me instead frequent the occupation of the state of the wish fulfilled. Let me get more and more familiar with that state of already being together." And then not barring yourself in imagination, not letting yourself not go there for XYZ reason, because that's also something we commonly do. John. That's if you're noticing dreams if you're noticing dreams that conform to what you've been imagining, that's fantastic indication. That's what that means. Thank you for the super chat. Oh, 2 of them. Uh, Thank you, Terrence. I don't see a question from you, but I will keep eyes out. Yeah, if you have a question, let me know so I can keep eyes. I will be keeping eyes. But Chrissy, thank you as well for the super chat. What if you feel like your desire is literally impossible to manifest due to circumstances? I get building faith, but for this, it's so hard to imagine that it would be possible. Good question. And this is a really, really important question. And I just made a video, I just recorded a video talking about this specifically because this is why we struggle to manifest. What we do, what we have a tendency of doing is taking the limitations of the 3D and using that to bar ourselves in imagination. We're using that to rope off our imagination or say, oh, because this thing isn't possible in 3D, I can't even allow myself to imagine that. But that's a mentality that we have to break. We have to break because if we are limiting ourselves to the conditions of the 3D, we won't see change. Because here's the thing, your imagination is limitless. That means there are no limits. That means there are no restrictions. That means there is nothing in this whole world that can stop you from imagining the desired outcome, except for you. You are the only person that can do that. And since we have that power and control to imagine anything that we want, we can lift those restrictions. We can imagine fully and deeply anything that we want. So, an important thing that we have to remember always is that the limitations are out there, but in here, they're non existent. So, it really does not matter. It really does not matter. If you find it a struggle, if it's so hard to do, there's a lot of that pushback. Start first with a general feeling. Start first with the general feeling of what this would be like. If that's feeling loved and adored and chosen and respected, safe, then get familiar with the general feeling of that. Get familiar with some things that could imply that. But ultimately, what we have to stop doing is barring our imagination and restricting ourselves in imagination because that's a whole world that is the creative power of God within us. Our imagination is our creative power because there are no limits. Period. Regardless of the 3D circumstances. I could be in a jail cell, close my eyes and imagine freedom, and I could walk free out that door in my imagination regardless. So don't take any of that with you. I beg of all of you, don't do it. Don't do it. You can tell I'm a little passionate about that, but yeah, because that's what kept me in bondage for so long. Oh, but it's not possible. Oh, but this can't happen. I need it to be like this first. How is that going to work? We don't need permission from anything or anyone to go there in imagination. What if we hate some aspects of our personality and want to change them? How can we do so? Good question. Um, yeah, if the aspects of our personality, that's the other incredible thing here. When it comes to the imagination, it's not just a way to imagine getting things, getting material things, or other people out there. We can imagine whole new aspects of ourselves because that version of ourself already exists. There's infinite versions of ourself that already exist. So whatever these aspects are that are not ideal, that you don't like, um, well, first get clear on the aspects that you do want and that you do desire, and begin to construct scenarios, begin to construct ideas or concepts that would imply that you are now this kind of person, that this is what you now identify with. This is your personality now. Like, what would that look like? What would that be like? I hope I'm making sense. But let's say if I was a very impatient person, which I very much used to be. I'm a very impatient person. I get bored and angry easily, and I want to change that. Well, I can imagine more thought out and calmer and like, "Oh my god, Missy, you're so much more patient these days. You used to explode. You used to do this so quickly. It's incredible to see." So, again, I'm just pulling examples out, but really play with the idea because, again, that version of us is already in existence. Like, we don't need to change ourselves. We just need to imagine the version of us that already exists and just become familiar with them, familiar with us. Everything is malleable. Yes, Tracy. Yes, 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 yes. Exactly. You talked about revising a day in 10 seconds. Is that something you can do with a long term revision? Or does it matter how detailed you get? Just what makes you happy? I just answered you. You did just answer your own question. I love seeing I love to see it. Yes. Yeah. We don't have to make revision this crazy drawn out ritual. I mean, we can. There is no right or wrong way to do it. It is whatever helps us, whatever feels most natural for us. Um, yeah, whatever feels most natural for us. Where was I? Sometimes I am just in an off mood, not because I have spiraled or anything. Does that affect my manifestation? Um, I mean, it certainly doesn't. I mean, just because, yeah, if we have a bad day, if we're in an off mood, it is what it is, right? That's what part of it's part of the human experience. We're gonna have moods, we're gonna have days. It's fine. What we just want to remember to do is change that. Like once the mood has passed, once we are feeling better, once we've kind of gotten to the other side of it, or we're feeling calmer, we're feeling more relaxed, or what have you, go back and revise. That's all. I mean, because it doesn't have to affect your manifestation. No, that's again the power that we have through revision. Regardless of a negative reaction or a bad day, it absolutely doesn't have to affect our manifestation. I'm revising situations on how I wanted it. It's like my whole life. So I wrote it down, like going back years. I like imagining it slowly, a scene here and there. Is that okay? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And if that's what resonates with you and that's how you like to do it and it's how you enjoy doing it, then 100%. Yeah. Yeah. There's really no right or wrong way to revise. As long as we're imagining that new memory, as long as we're, continuing to mold and change those old memories, however we wanna go about doing it, totally fine. Where was I? How would you change a flight path to change from above your new house? So, how would you imagine changing, like, planes flying over your house? I take it the loud noises? I hope that's what you mean, Tracy? And correct me if I'm wrong. What I would do if that were me and I didn't like the noise, I would take a moment to imagine myself at the end of the day being like, "Wow, it's been so quiet this week. I haven't heard any planes fly over." And just take a moment to feel that satisfaction, that like, "Oh, yes." And I would drop it if I understood right. I do a night I do a scene at night. My marriage from sorry, Sarah, hope I'm understanding. So you do a scene at night, imagining that you're married. Is it important to do during the day, 2 to 3 times a day for 5 10 minutes, stay in the wish fulfilled? Um, we wanna stay in that uh, ideally, as we wanna occupy that as much as possible. Um, so if there's a scene that you have, you know, bring that up and continue to go back there. If you notice especially if you notice yourself having fallen out of that state, like if perhaps something happened that took you right back to that old state, that unwanted state, um, use that as your cue to imagine, go back again. Um, but yeah, the frequency of occupation is something that we want to absolutely be mindful of. So as much and as often as you can in your day to day, we want to be living from the state of the wish fulfilled. Thank you, bub. You are so welcome. Sorry, damn it. Chat likes to be very jumpy. I do your SP meditation daily, and that feels good to me. Good. I'm glad you enjoy the meditation. Honestly, the new month triggered me. Yeah, yeah, time is one of those things that can be incredibly triggering. I unlearning and unconditioning all of this, yeah, it's not always a smooth ride, but it continues to get easier and more natural. That I can promise. How long does it take to become familiar with the state of being prioritized? Um, that is a it's challenging to give exact time frames. Um, it's gonna be different for everybody. How long does it take to get familiar with a new state of consciousness? Really depends. Depends on how often in the day you are occupying that state, like, how frequently are you returning to that state in your day to day? Do you already have a lot of resistance or a lot of, pushback to the idea? Do you struggle with the idea? Things like that. So, yeah, giving exact time frames, not easy to do because it's gonna be, different for everybody. Could be minutes, could be longer. I'm sorry. But regardless, I would continue to go there in the day to day. I'd continue to occupy that new state in the day to day. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Missy. I was in the end with my SP. We were in contact. Oh, I was in the end with my SP, in contact, being together, but there's been no contact in the 3D for months. Was feeling good lately, but now I am blocked everywhere. Is the old story coming back or a purge is going on? Now 3D is opposite. Ugh, I am so sorry. I know it can be incredibly frustrating when things are going very well and then the 3D is just like goes to hell for no apparent reason. Um, it sounds very much like ego backlash, which I have made a video talking about that and how that happens sometimes. Seemingly when things are going very well or when we've been doing really well, like we've been making progress and then boom, something happens in the 3D or something like that. Yeah, I would look up the video that I made about ego backlash. Check that out where I kind of break it down in more detail. But regardless, 3D is malleable as clay. And even if that old man or the ego is throwing a fit, ultimately it doesn't matter. Because the more that you continue to occupy that new state and go to the end, and the more that you continue to do that, there will be less backlash. Like that the backlash will cease to be. It's not gonna be that every time we go to the end, something crazy happens. No. This is just with something that we're not familiar with, it can happen, and that's kind of what I'm gathering from what you're describing. Don't accept the 3D outcomes and circumstances if they're not what you want. Um, check out that video I made about ego backlash and continue to go back to the end. Continue to frequent that state in imagination. And again, I know it's hard to pull away from the 3D. We're so damn conditioned to the 3D, but none of that matters. And also be sure to be observant. Be sure to just be mindful of what you're noting in your day-to-day. Basically, take note of your mental diet because a lot of times we're not even aware of what we're imagining in the day-to-day. We're very much on autopilot. So something in the 3D shows up for us and we're just like, where the hell did that come from? It could be because we were not aware of what exactly we were dwelling on or what we were imagining. So, yeah, check out those things, keep going. Don't ever accept what you don't want. And I've got time for maybe one or two more questions. How do you feel about tarot? Um, tarot cards? I mean, as in, do I believe that there's a power outside of us that can tell us the future? No, no. I know that there's been a trend of looking to tarot readings to find out our self concept or get an idea of our self concept, basically looking to cards to tell us who we are. There's a much more effective way to do that. If you're curious to know what state you're occupying or what your beliefs and assumptions are, observation. Just observing your thoughts, observing your day-to-day reactions, observing the 3D circumstances. That's all feedback directly telling you what state of consciousness you've been occupying dominantly or yeah, what that conception of self looks like. Uh, I don't recommend looking out to the 3D for answers because we're not going to find answers out there. We're not gonna yeah, we're not gonna find answers as to, like, things that are going to happen in the future. You will never find that outside of us, ever. How much time can I spend in my imagination every day? Can I spend too much time in my imagination? No, I don't think so because the thing is we're always in imagination. All the time, all day, every day. We're in our imagination. Like that's and if you want to test this for yourself, like try to have no thoughts for 5 minutes. Try not to have a single thought. Try to keep your mind completely blank for 5 minutes. Not going to be able to do it. The vast majority of people are not going to be able to do it. Let me correct that. Because we're always imagining. We always have this inner world, this inner dialogue, we have this inner mind going all the time. So to say that we're spending too much time in imagination is kind of silly because we're always imagining, good or bad, and yeah. So no, you can always spend as much time as you would like in imagination because that's what you're doing anyway. So if we're doing it all the time anyways, why not be of things that we enjoy? why not? Why not be lovely things? Do you know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. Hi, Missy. Question. Any tips for what to do when nothing seems to work? I'm working at myself, keeping busy, going to therapy, but I haven't heard a peep from SP. Good question. Well, by nothing working, techniques are not creating the desired change you want to see. What we have to remember is that the techniques are not what makes this change happen. I'm not quite sure what you mean by working at yourself. Keeping busy, going to therapy. Well, what is your mental diet in the day to day? Is the first thing that I ask, and the first thing I would recommend being mindful of, like in your day to day, without trying, without flipping any thoughts or focusing on or trying to take our focus away. Like, what are the natural thoughts, feelings, reactions coming up for you in the day to day? Because that's what we want to note. That's what's going to tell us, what state we've been occupying. Um, that's going to give you the feedback to see perhaps if nothing is working, and by that you mean your SB hasn't reached out. Um, are you continuing to go back to that assumption that SP is gone or SP is separate from you, or are you continuing to bring the 3D into awareness and the lack of the circumstances that you desire? Are you continuing to become aware of what you don't want? I hope that makes sense. Because the reason that we are imagining ourself as the person that we want to be is we're focusing on getting familiar with that version, that state of consciousness. And we're doing it strictly from the place of we want to enjoy the feeling of it. We just want to enjoy it. We want to relish in it. We want to feel good in it, not to get the 3D to change. We're not doing techniques to get the 3D to change. And it may be that that's been the approach that you've been taking. Um, Can't say for sure, but I know I was certainly do that for a long time. I was trying to, like, check these boxes of what I needed to do to get my person back. All the while, I was still constantly living that old story in my mind over and over and over like a broken tape. So, note your mental diet, note what you're thinking and feeling throughout the day. That's gonna tell you like, why it's not working or where it's not working. It's gonna tell you everything. And then continue to imagine, continue to go to these places in your mind because it feels good to do so. Because why not? Not to get the 3D to change. Again, we're not doing this to like wave a wand to get the 3D to change. That's not what this is about. But continue to occupy the state that already exists. It's already real. Continue to go back there. Continue to go back there. Right? Um, Yeah, because what is the story that you have of SP? Like, what's the first thing that comes up when you think of SP? Um, that's sort of what I did to see where I was at. What's the first reaction or what's the first thought when my SP comes up in my mind? What's the first thing that comes up? And if it was not desirable, if it was not ideal, that's how I knew. It's got to change. Hi, Mimi. Can't talk. Can't talk. Hi, Missy. I remember you saying to just imagine for the sake of experiencing it and not trying to get it in 3D, but isn't this the same as daydreaming? What's the difference? Good question. Um, no, it is not the same as daydream. Daydreaming is basically just when we imagine something but still very much separate from it. So I could imagine going on a trip to Paris and how lovely that would be. That would be so awesome. But Yeah, but too bad I couldn't have the time to go. I'm not gonna go there for a while. That's impossible. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Like, we tend to, think of these things as, like, separate, far off, not possible things, right? That's daydreaming. That's daydreaming. If we're thinking of it from the place of separation, longing for it, "I'm never gonna be able to have that. It's not possible." That's daydreaming, right? It's a lovely thought, but it's wishful thinking, right? That's daydreaming. So, imagining something as if you're experiencing it, like to enjoy the experience of it for the pure sake of enjoyment, is not putting conditions on it. Like, you're not conditioning anything in your imagination. You're not saying, like, I have to force myself to do these techniques to get this outcome, which is only going to create like pressure and stress and tense and anxiousness, right? Um, I'm relaxed and I'm just allowing myself to imagine something because it feels good. And no, there shouldn't be resistance to that because it feels good. Things that feel good tend to relax us. We tend to, ease into it. We tend to enjoy it more. It doesn't feel like a chore, right? So, do you see what I mean? I mean, of course, we want the 3D outcome. We're all here for the 3D outcome, but it's the mindset, it's the approach, it's how we're looking at this. Because even the mindset of I need to do this thing to change this thing, in and of itself, is a lack mindset. It's a mindset that says I don't have this. To awareness, it clearly shows a separation between you and your desire. So we don't want that. We don't want that. So yeah, I hope that made sense. Hope that made sense. Um, Sorry, I'm just checking something real quick, you guys. I'm back. Where am I? How can we have a night routine of sats without it feeling like you're in a continuous state of trying to get your desire? When doubts come in, I tell myself I'll do sats, but isn't that trying? Um, so I think what would be a helpful way to look at this and start to change how we're looking at this. One way that we need to do that is realizing that we're always imagining anyways. Like that's something that we're always, 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 always doing, right? So this isn't just, when we're doing the technique, we're manifesting. I'm manifesting when I'm affirming, or I'm manifesting when I'm doing sats. We're always manifesting because we're always imagining, right? So if you have a night routine before bed where you are ruminating on something before bed, that's sats, right? If you tend to get lost in your thoughts before bed, that's sats, right? Because the acronym SATS is the state akin to sleep. It doesn't even have anything to do with visualizing. I know the way that Neville taught it, he would visualize and construct a scene, but SATS is just the drowsy state. That's all that means. It's what we are imagining, what we're ruminating on before bed or when we are in that drowsy state. So if like we're just changing up what we are imagining in that state. So instead of ruminating on things that are terrible, on things that we don't want, we start to imagine and let ourselves get lost in the feelings of things we enjoy. Do you see what I mean? So we're not like trying to force ourselves to jump through this hoop. Oh God, I got to do sats tonight. I got to get myself prepared. I got to try to focus. My mind's going to wander. Like that sounds like that's awful. That does not sound fun. But if I lay down, get comfortable, and I start to just relax my body, relax my mind, and like, what do I want to do? What do I want to go? I got this whole big imagination, this whole vast world. What feels good? What sounds good? And just let yourself go there. It might take a little bit of practice. Again, this is a whole new way of thinking, but it becomes second nature if we just learn to relax into it and allow ourselves to enjoy it and give ourselves permission to go places in our imagination that are desirable. Because I talked about that earlier. We tend to bar ourselves in imagination. Don't do that. Thank you for the super chat, Chrissy. When doing sats, is it more effective to drift off to sleep after the imaginal act? Uh, Sorry, is it more effective to drift off to sleep after the imaginal act right away, or is it just as effective even when we're still awake after and our minds are wandering? Yeah. No, we don't have to fall asleep right away. Like after we've imagined our scene, after we've, let ourselves loop the scene and go there, and we don't have to like immediately drop off into sleep. Once we've captured that feeling, um, we can just enjoy that feeling until we fall asleep, whenever that might be. So even if our minds wander into something else, right? Maybe another scene pops in, another conversation pops in. Um, yeah, yeah. So long as if the feeling's still there, if it still feels enjoyable, if it still feels good, that's what counts. So yeah, we don't have to drop ourselves off right away. And lastly, before I go, I had this question sent in from somebody who couldn't be here, and it's a really, really good one. So I want to make sure to answer this one from Jimena. Neville states, I am is a feeling of permanent awareness. The very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I cannot forget that I am. The awareness of being remains, regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who, where, and what we are. What is the difference, if there is any, between permanent awareness and permanent vigilance? I feel like I'm in a constant state of vigilance, and hence I am always tense, making sure or trying to that I don't fall into past patterns of thought and action. That is a fantastic question. What's the difference between permanent awareness and permanent vigilance? Um, Vigilance is going to continue to keep us in that very tense state. Vigilance is it's an action, it's a willpower, right? We're having to constantly like police ourselves. We're having to constantly force ourselves to think a certain way, or if we catch ourselves thinking a certain way, we have to deal with it. That's a lot more of a conscious, yeah, like an action or something that we have to do to get something. Again, I have to be constantly vigilant so that I don't fall into past patterns. Um, and yeah, we want to be aware, we want to be mindful, but do we need to police ourselves in every moment of the day? No, no, because permanent awareness is just that. It's that awareness that we always have. We're aware of everything. We're aware of our thoughts. We are aware of being vigilant, right? Which implies that vigilance is something outside of you. It's an action. That's not who we are. That permanent awareness, that is God. That is the being of everything there is. That is God. That is the I am. So permanent awareness is just that. It's whatever we are aware of, whatever we are aware of in consciousness. So I hope that makes sense. But one is the being that we are, one is God, and one is an action. Permanent vigilance implies that we need to constantly police ourselves, which we don't need to do. We don't need to do. Because yeah, we're going to continue to feel very tense. We're going to continue to feel very stressed if we feel like we have to be on guard, catching every single negative thought that comes through our mind. We can let all that go because we'll become aware if we're not feeling great. We don't have to police it. right? And when we do become aware of it, we just know the steps to take to redirect it. I hope that makes sense, but I thought that was a fantastic question because it does point to we want to make sure that we're not, like, fixated on, "I have to catch everything, I have to be on guard all the time." That's only gonna create, like, tension and restrictiveness, like, it's not gonna be ideal. Not gonna be ideal. But anyways, on that note, let me just double check something really quick. I know there's so many questions pouring in, and I'm so sorry, you guys. I wish I could stay all day and answer the questions. I do got a couple other things I gotta jump into. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for being here. Much love to all of you. Fantastic questions today. Take care of yourself. Love yourself always. I will hopefully see you all next weekend. Take care, guys. Bye.